Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm host for today's broadcast, Insanely 13, as we are preparing to get underway here for the 6th race of FEC's 2026 Summer IndyCar Series. Last week had a interesting finish for what was a relatively restrained and dull race, as the top two Fords that ran off into the distance were right on top of each other they were setting themselves up for a teammate battle when one of them ran out. The other one went on to take victory, his second victory in just 4 starts this season. That also was compounded with the championship leader, Scored Buffalo, going a lap down through some suboptimal rules writing and perfectly executed rules execution, trapping the points leader a lap down. He spent most of the entire race a lap down, although he was able to claim up to score an 8th place finish at the end of it. Still, your points leader, Scored Buffalo, has already missed a race. He can't afford any more bad finishes like this. However, this is looking like it will be a smaller field today. Only 11 drivers are anticipated to take part in tonight's event. So for Scored Buffalo, even if he has an absolutely atrocious finish and lags out 5 laps into the event, it doesn't matter. He is not going to lose as many points as he could have in earlier races in the season. Real quickly, let's go ahead and look at the championship standings as they are right now. A lot of different drivers have withdrawn or pulled out from the series after what has happened in the last few events. So the championship points near the bottom of the grid are going to stay pretty much the same going forward, but higher up we're going to be seeing a lot of interesting changes. There's a tie for 31st between Dusty, VER Twitchy, Rated Havoc, Packerman, and Deed Speeman. They all have 10 points each. There's also VER Razor and Drew Rocks 2006. They are tied for 29th. They have 11 points each. In 28th is GGA Spino with 16 points. Initially, he was going to start the race, but then he pulled out last minute. Indyal Drewski is 27th with 18 points. There is a tie for 25th between XMS Dragon and Kuroshine. They both have 20 points each. 24th is Big Block. He has 21 points. Ahead of him is Keen Racing Leo with 23 points. Kneesmorphed is 22nd with 27 points at this stage of the season. In 21st is VER Polax. He has 30 points, all those earned in that first race of the season. He has not made an attempt at another start since then. 20th in the championship is the Big Mav. He has 38 points after that podium back at Miami. PTG Speed is 19th with 41 points. He is one of the drivers anticipated to not show up for the rest of the season. Dr. Pepper is 18th with 44 points. 2 Fuzzball 4267 is 17th with 51 points. There is a tie for 15th between PTG Neb and Indyal Shadow. Neither of them are here tonight. 14th is Donald Prime 77, who came home second in the championship last season, but he's missing his second race of thus far this year. He has only got 53 points. And 14th and 13th is Stinky Potato with 55 points. Indyal Dindu, who won 2 weeks ago at Grand Oak Reverse, is still sitting 13th in points with 56. He is not showing up for tonight's event either. Jack Broseph is 11th with 60 points right now. In 10th position is Coca, who has 62 points on the season. He was our pole sitter last week at Indy. 9th is Pindaz with 65 points. 8th is Prius Killer 8110 with 70 points. 7th is Thomas 086R with 72 points. Then, I believe that he is the lowest of all drivers who have attended all races thus far. 6th is Amish Gaming 23 with 79 points. 5th is JRPK Golden with 81. 4th is NFL Racer 4812 with 85 points. And then you get to your 3 championship contenders, and after a day, that number will almost certainly go down to 2. 3rd in the championship is Maybe Racing. He is off the back of his third podium result in the last 4 races. He has 110 points right now. Claiming Racer, who won both at Miami and last week at the Indy 250, is at 124 points. He is not starting today's event, though. That will almost certainly take him out of the championship hunt, as he has already missed a race this season. And then your championship leader, Scored Buffalo, leads with 132 points total. He has 8 points over Claiming, but with Maybe being his biggest contender, he has a 22-point gap over Maybe Racing. Maybe needs to go out, win tonight, win big, and make sure that Scored Buffalo finishes at least worse than second. Because again, the gap between first and second in this series is a 10-point swing. There is a big swing in points earned from first to second in a race result, and that gap only gets bigger the farther back you go. For maybe the perfect points day would be for him to win the race and Scored Buffalo to come home second. But we need to talk about what this race was like last season. Last season, the car was considered to be extremely understeery. Stable, almost like a brick, but very understeery. Despite that, we saw multiple drivers losing control of their cars on various parts of the track, most notably in the kink where we see the field about to come up to now. This season, the cars have been rebuilt, downforce has been taken out, the gearing has been changed. The suspension has not been changed, it still has the same pros and cons from last season. The result is that overall on the road courses, on the twisties, the drivers say that the car is a lot more unstable on the nose and the rear, and we saw that in qualifying, both round 1 and round 2 qualifying. Multiple drivers were having major moments of oversteer on corner exit. Not just by a few degrees, but we were looking at 6 to 7 degrees of oversteer coming out of the corners, enough that in these very twitchy cars, it can either send you flying into the inside wall, or you can try to overcorrect and go into the outside wall. Maybe Racing last season was dominating this race until a self-inflicted mistake on an easier to drive car caused them to crash in the kink that gave this race win to Scored Buffalo last season. Maybe starting on the pole today would like to repeat the domination without the accident, but with a harder to drive car, we don't know if that's going to be possible. The other thing as well though, Scored Buffalo is dealing with a slightly different setup at his place, so he is going to be trying to get used to a new setup as the field is now doubled up here as they come up the hill. Take the green flag for what will be a 37-lap affair. Maybe Racing on the inside, Scored Buffalo on the outside. Your two main contenders in the championship after tonight's race is over. The green flag is in the air. We are underway, and Maybe gets a great lunge, and so does Prius. It is Prius who immediately goes to the inside of Scored Buffalo. Neck and neck between these two as they fire off into turn number 1 this time by. Around the outside, Scored Buffalo should have the advantage. He does. Plenty of traction out there, but Prius is able to keep it alongside him just a little bit longer. Now into the second braking zone. Prius gets into the rear of Maybe just a little bit. Really backs that 76 up, and Scored Buffalo fires by. There goes Coca. Coca and Prius, these two have driven with each other off and on since about 2019. They both have a good idea what each other can do. Prius won at Indy last season. Coca won the pole at Indy this season. We normally think of them both as oval drivers, but they have shown good competency at the road courses before. This is the fight for third position right now. And look at Big Block, who's currently running 5th place right now. Big slide off track by Coca as they came out of turn number 6, and Prius goes back into third. Coca is going to fall behind Big Block, fall behind NFL, might even be caught by GRPK Golden, depending on how this goes. But at the front, it is Maybe Racing leading over Scored Buffalo, but just barely. Now they come into the carousel for the first time at full racing speed. Through this high-speed carousel, absolutely blitzing pace right now, but not a good place to make overtakes. Now they come up to the kink. This was the problem corner last season. What will it be this season? Big slide there by Maybe. The car oversteered on exit and it went to the inside. Scored now goes even deeper to the inside. So Scored will have the inside line as they come into Canada corner. Side by side for a lead. Out of Canada corner. Both cars really struggling to put the power down on corner exit. Neck and neck between the two of them. Maybe goes back into position. Scored's the one off. Scored is the one to make the first big mistake. He goes up there in the second to last corner. Shades of Paul Tracy in 1993. And Prius Killer goes up into second spot, and now it is Prius who is right behind Maybe Racing. Maybe is going to defend the inside line. Prius uses the draft to pull alongside on the outside. Maybe leads at the line. GRPK Golden is pitting farther back already. Prius has the car about 2/3 of the way ahead, but on the outside, you have to brake just a little bit earlier to ensure you can make the corner. But Prius runs wide, and he'll get back onto the circuit right in front of Maybe. Prius goes into the lead. This is the first time that someone who's not one of those Fords has led on a road course for oh so long. No, that's not really true. I guess Dindu did win at Grand Oak. I guess I am a little bit overstating it. But Prius goes in the lead, and now Maybe is back under threat from Scored Buffalo. This is suboptimal for Maybe, but Prius missed the corner at the heaviest braking zone at the end of the longest straightaway here. And now Maybe closed right back up onto him, and Prius slides the rear end out coming out of turn number 6. So Prius, Maybe, and Scored, the top 3, all right on top of each other. Midway through his lap, and another gigantic twitch by Maybe as he got over the curbs. That's the other thing, the cars this year seem to be a lot more unstable going over the curbs, having a lot more twitching and sliding moments on circuit, and that's Scored Buffalo who's wide coming into the carousel this time. And a bad entry into the carousel is something that haunts you through the rest of the carousel, haunts you down to the kink, and unless you have a good draft on the driver ahead, it will haunt you for the rest of the lap pretty much. But it does look like Buffalo's into the outside wall. Buffalo twishes again. He goes into the outside wall. There's no damage to the car. It was a relatively flush hit. He'll keep going without issue. But your championship leader has had 2 incidents in the first 2 laps alone. Somehow he has gotten away with no issues whatsoever. He's still third, but he needs to figure out a way to minimize that. And that's another issue. He goes off at the same corner he went off earlier on lap 1. And now all of a sudden, NFL racers starting to close in on him. Mind you, NFL racer and GRPK Golden are in a fight for what would basically be best of the rest, which is currently 4th in championship points. So NFL has his own pride he is going for right now. But at the front, Prius Killer led that lap. It is Maybe who runs in 2nd position. No Satel as they go through turn number 1. Not needing to go side by side. This means that both Prius and Maybe can run a much more cleaned up line, take quite a bit more speed through there without too much issue. Same as they now come onto the back straightaway. Maybe we'll have a fantastic draft on Prius, but Prius will be able to defend as he desires, and they currently have a 2-second lead on Scored Buffalo and NFL, so it is just these two all by themselves. Prius goes to the outside. Maybe he's just going to back off. He's not going to make the move here this time by. You can visibly see how upset that number 1 machine that Maybe is in gets as he goes over those curbs. The curbs at Road America in this game are infamous for being bad. I know a lot of drivers like to say, oh, the Road Atlanta curbs are worse, but the Road America curbs, I would argue, are some of the worst and most aggressive in the game, because when you go over them, you have no idea how it's going to affect your car. At Road Atlanta, at least, the curbs there, you have a good idea how they're going to affect your car. You're going to go from having grip to no grip whatsoever, so your tires go into the air. Here, you don't know if you'll have grip, you don't know if you'll just have some grip or no grip at all. It is almost completely random, and these Indy cars, at the high speeds they are going, need to be focused on downforce, but that downforce only works if the tires are making contact with the ground. And with how unsteady these things seem to be going over the curves, that's guaranteeing that your tires are going to be in contact with the ground in these cars is a very, very big ask around here. And now it's Maybe who slides off, not nearly as much as Scored did earlier, but Maybe showing a little bit of weakness right now, and Prius has gone into the lead. Another slide off there coming out of the final quarter for Maybe, and Prius now breaks the draft on Maybe. So now as we start our 4th racing lap, let's look at the tire wear. 19.3% for Prius right now. For Maybe, who runs into 2nd position, he is at 18.6% on the rear tires. Scored Buffalo, who runs in 3rd position, he is at 19.1%. So Maybe is doing better on the tire wear than everyone around him. NFL in 4th, 19.7% wear. Big Block back here in 5th. He is kind of lost touch with the lead group. He is at 20% wear. And then one quick look at Coca here, who is back here in 6th position, 13.4% wear. So Coca is the highest driver of everyone who is running a harder compound tire here in the earlier stages of the race. But Maybe Racing has lost touch with Prius for the moment, and now Scored Buffalo is starting to close in on Maybe. Well, the good news for Maybe is that Scored is not in 1st or 2nd. The bad news is Maybe, if he wants to get back into the championship lead, he needs to be in the lead. He can't afford to be running behind Prius, although it looks like he's just about to catch Prius's draft again as they're coming into the carousel. But again, a big slide from that number 1 machine as it goes over those curbs, and you could see him losing so much time in the process. Draft doesn't really help you in the carousel. It opens up to 7/10, but now he'll have top speed in the kink. And then on the run down to Canada Corner, big slide for Prius on the exit of the kink. He lost a bunch of time as the car had a massive oversteer moment, and it swerved to the inside. Maybe, though, does not get a chance to close the gap as much as he wants. He's only down to about half a second out, but Maybe has now broken the draft on Scored Buffalo again, so Maybe can try and focus forward as he again drops tires into the dirt. A lot less extreme than what he did last time. Both Prius and Maybe have a suboptimal exit out of the final corner, but Maybe is still close enough to have the draft on Prius. Scored is not close enough to have the draft on Maybe. Coca runs 7.5 seconds out from this group, so Coca is losing about 1.1 to 1.2 seconds to the lead trio each lap on those harder compound tires. But again, if you can go about 5 laps on the soft tire compounds and take that to about the 20% mark, you could go about 15 laps on the softs, I would imagine, overall, and you could make it a soft medium race without too much issue here. There would be some level of strategy. Which tire compound do you want to be on at the start of the race? but it does seem like the strategy is going to be relatively flat and straightforward as long as we have no yellow flags. Dr. Pepper, Keen Racing Leo, and DRPK Golden have all lost touch with the rest of the field. Golden pitted at the end of lap 1. We are not really sure what happened to warrant that. Run downhill. This can be an overtaking opportunity with slower cars. With how large and fast the Indy cars are, you don't really want to make overtakes here. And now into the carousel again. Maybe has absolutely caught Prius, as now harassing him. Score Buffalo is 1 second out from the leaders. He is almost close enough to catch the draft. We could have a menage a trois fight at the head of the grid once more. Now, through the kink again, maybe a little bit wide, but he does a great job not spending any time on the curbs. And you can see Prius hit the inside curbs this time, spat him wide, and he lost a bunch of time due to that. Maybe right under Prius's rear wing, just at the apex of Canada Corner that time by. Now they come up to the last 2 corners on the circuit. This is where maybe and Score has shown some weakness, but maybe seems to have finally figured it out, and Scored's figured it out as well. Scored is now close enough to get a draft on Maybe, and Maybe is almost right underneath the rear wing of Prius as they head back uphill once again. And the big thing, remember, Maybe is doing slightly better on his tire management than Prius is. Now, at a big, long circuit like Road America, that does not transfer into a advantage and being able to pit a lap earlier, a lap later. You need a massive advantage, but a 1% advantage. Oh, wow, big loose moment for Maybe as he goes over those outside curbs. Again, every time that car goes over the curbs, it loses downforce. But as I was saying, a slight advantage in tire life can mean that you can find a lot of extra time in the final third or final 2/3 of a lap when you and your rivals are going to come into the pits. It can be a big thing to help even close up the gap on the driver ahead or end up ahead of the other guy just before you make a pit stop. And if you and the other guy are making the exact same changes in pit lane, putting in the same amount of fuel and the same changes on tires, being able to get that overtake done right before you come into the pits off the back of slightly better tires will have a monumental positive impact. Scored Buffalo's fallen about 7/10 out. It seems like every time he catches the draft of this duo, they seem to open up the gap a bit, and Buffalo falls off. But Maybe continues to hound Prius, but is not actively fighting him on track right now, as we are in the middle of lap 6, going through the carousel. And they'll come out of this nice short straightaway up to the kink. Now Scored Buffalo closer to Maybe than Maybe is to Prius. A big slide by Maybe on the exit of the kink that time. Complete oversteer moment, but that car was turning about 12 to 14 degrees to the right coming out of the kink. And now Scored is closed right up on Maybe. Maybe is still within half a second of Prius, but Scored is now right behind Maybe, and Maybe slides tires into the dirt in the second to last corner again. Scored does not make that mistake. And your top 2 in the championship just about nose to tail. But the big thing is, yes, Scored is a draft on Maybe, but Maybe still is close enough to get a draft on Prius, and he can use that as a defense to keep Scored from pulling alongside him, going into the braking zone at the end of the front straightaway. Someone has gone off in the final corner, and that seems to be Coca in that number 67 car. No damage, but it seems like the car has flown off circuit. So I think that may spell doom for these drivers hoping to make it a one-stop affair, soft medium. The medium tires may not have the grip necessary to make something happen. Down the back straightaway into the hill, Prius defends the outside, Maybe lunges up the inside. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to defend in that scenario. Prius keeps it wrapped around the outside, trying to keep Maybe pinched down, but now they'll come up into turn 6. This corner is going to be great for Maybe. He has the ideal lane. Prius comes down again, pinches Maybe down again. Now through turn 7, you got to be careful here because the surface is uneven through here. And Maybe backs out of it, but in the process of backing out is Scored Buffalo who goes by. Scored lunges to the inside of Prius. Prius again on the outside, the following corner. He'll pinch Scored down and fire out now into the carousel. He is just barely ahead of Scored Buffalo. Scored goes wide and now Maybe pulls up alongside. You do not want to be side by side in the carousel, but you can survive it. But they might be side by side coming into the kink. Maybe backs out. He does not want to be side by side with him in the kink, but Buffalo's wide. Just barely keeps out of the grass in the kink. Gets a fantastic draft on Prius on the run out. And now Scored Buffalo closing down on Prius as it comes to the braking zone. Canada corner. It closes down, but is not enough to get alongside of that number 76. Prius slides a little bit as he gets onto the curbs on the outside. Scored Buffalo closes in once again. Prius is the one who goes wide, and Maybe goes wide as well. He's around, and your second place driver of the championship has gone around and goes deep into the dirt in the final corner. So maybe Racing now falls out of the podium position. NFL Racer is going to go by him. Big Block's going to go by him. 2 Fuzzball might even go by him as well. And at the front is going to be Prius and Scored Buffalo now. This is fantastic news for Scored Buffalo in his quest to hold on to the championship. And maybe is actually pitting. Maybe might have damage to that car. Does Maybe have damage to that car? Yes, significant rear-end damage to Maybe's machine after he lost control. It wasn't the same corner as it was last season, but in this race last season, Maybe was the fastest driver. A complete self-inflicted mistake, and the King took him out of the race win. And now it looks like the same thing has happened again, but Scored Buffalo is pulled to the inside of Prius Killer. Goes by him as they come down into turn number 5. He's completed the overtake. Scored Buffalo now goes into the lead. So Scored Buffalo now leads over Prius Killer. They go under the Corvette bridge in through turn number 6. Buffalo's a little bit wide. Prius pulls right back up behind Scored Buffalo all over again, but then gets onto the curbs, slides a little bit, breaks the downforce a bit, and now Buffalo is already starting to open the gap on Prius. And now the gap is starting to scoot away just a bit back in Scored's favor. You'll go through the carousel. You do not want to have the draft in the carousel. It causes the car to get dragged faster in a straight line than what you normally would have. But Prius trying to do everything he can to stay in draft range, going through the kink and then into Canada corner. And now that's Prius into the dirt, going through the kink, and he's still in the dirt. Big slide, but he's still within 0.7 of a second, and now he falls out of 0.7 of a second of Scored Buffalo just as he gets into Canada corner. So the draft, Prius being dragged into the draft, was carried into the kink at a speed much higher than he had dealt with thus far, and that caught him off guard and it dragged him into the dirt. Thankfully, Prius did not hit the wall, did not damage the car at all. But frustration for Prius, because now the draft between him and Scored Buffalo has been broken, and Scored is likely going to walk off into the distance with nobody pressuring him to the end of this race. And with how small the field is, we're likely to see a repeat of what we did at Grand Oak, where the race is going to go green and caution-free from the start to the end. So Maybe Racing has gone ahead, made his pit stop to repair the damage to the car. That pushed him down to 9th position, while the championship leader, Scored Buffalo, is currently first on track. Scored's record on ovals has been suboptimal, but there are so many road courses on the season, and Scored Buffalo, if he can just stay ahead of Maybe with these significant gaps like what we're seeing right now, it might be enough to keep him there. And it looks like Coca has pulled out of the affair. We'll try to reach out to Coca and see what has happened here to cause him to back out. NFL Racer now runs third, 8.8 seconds out of the lead, and coming in the party right now is Coca Gamer. Coca, are you able to include your audio in the Xbox party?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Coca, you were the highest running driver on a alternate tire strap, but we saw you have that big off in the final corner and then drop out. What took you out there?
Yeah, just a bad mistake on my end. From there on, I don't know if you caught that last bit, but I went off, hit the barrier, and this is going to be a caution-free race. So, yeah, kind of blows, but I don't know. I don't know what everyone else was on. I was just trying to do mediums, and I don't know. That was probably not the right decision. So, it is what it is. Hopefully, I'm free for next week.
You say this is going to be a caution-free race. Did the officials already confirm it was going to be a caution-free race? Or
No. I assume it's going to be. I could be wrong, though, but it is what it is. I had a big off, so.
Well, you were not the only one. On the exact same lap, we saw Maybe have a big off and total his car as well, and there was still no yellow, so it does seem like your assumption may have some teeth to it. It is nice to hear, though, that you will be coming back, if possible, next week. Thanks for jumping in and talking with us, Coca. Frustrating end for your run here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it is what it is. See you guys.
All right, so we turn our focus back to the leaders. Prius, once he catches Scored Buffalo, he closes right in on him, but he keeps running into the dirt, going through the kink. But Scored Buffalo is making a small assortment of mistakes on other parts of the track right now, which is leaving him open to attack from Prius time and time again. Now, one second. Now, Scored has not been absolutely bulletproof perfect. He did miss the race win back at Grand Oak 2 weeks ago off the back of a slight strategy miscue, which gave him great speed and tires, but suboptimal track position, and it ended that he was just right behind the race winner at the end of that race. And Scored Buffalo right now is showing that he could still be under threat today by an outsider the same way he was under threat 2 weeks ago. But for Scored, I don't think he'd be worried too much because his biggest rival in the championship is Maybe Racing, as Claiming Racer, who was second in points coming in, has missed today's race. He's not going to earn anything. So it's really just going to come down to Scored versus Maybe in the championship fight. And right now, Scored, he can come home in second and still open or continue to open the gap on Maybe going forward. But for the race win, Prius is still right here. He's within half a second of Scored as they go down the front straightaway. Close enough to continue to stalk him, not really close enough to make any moves on him. Out of the second heavy braking zone, and now down the one of the two fastest straightaways. Some would argue that this straight is the fastest because you're running downhill into a braking zone. Some would say that the front straight is the fastest because it's just longer and it cancels out the amount of speed you lose going uphill. And Scored missed the braking zone! Scored missed the braking zone! And there goes Prius back by to the lead! So it seems like everyone who has been fast today has just made small mistakes, and all of a sudden Prius goes in the lead as Scored Buffalo slides out wide in the braking zone, and now Prius slides wide in the dirt coming out of turn 8. All right, now they're going to come down into the carousel once again. Prius has it. This time, Scored is the one in the draft. Scored is going to use up everything he can in tires. He pulls up right behind that 76. You don't want to make a move side by side into the kink if you can help it. It is almost guaranteed an accident if you do so. Both of them slide. The rear ends fishtail out, and Scored Buffalo came inches away from losing control of the car out of the corner there. That is Dr. Pepper, who has just pitted at the end of that lap. And as I look at the tire wear of Prius Killer right now, 61% on that left front. I look at Scored Buffalo, who runs just a little bit behind him. He is at 59%, so Scored is doing better managing his tires right now. But he has been a little bit more mistake-prone as our leaders come out of the final corner, back uphill. So with this being a 38-lap race, if these drivers have only gone 12 laps, well, it looks like they're going to force each other to go 13 laps, but if they're going 13 laps on a set of soft tires, you could probably make your next stop around lap 26, 25 or 26, and be good on tire life to the end. Relatively flat tire strategy, I would imagine, although I do think if you could find speed with the mediums, you could make this a medium single-stop race. But no one seems to be willing to do that. Everyone seems to be committed to having grip, and with how twitchy and slidey these cars are, I feel that there's nothing wrong with that strategy. Everybody, including our fastest drivers today, seem to be struggling with grip, and now Scored Buffalo locks up the brakes and runs right into the rear diffuser of Prius Killer in the braking zone under the Corvette bridge, and now through turn 6 again. Come back downhill. Again, Prius just drops the left side tires just slightly into the dirt, enough to throw up a small dirt cloud, but it doesn't look like it's enough to really compromise his grip. Oh, but that's going to compromise him. Prius slow, going into the carousel. Scored's going to come into the outside. Prius inside, Scored outside the carousel, and Prius gets back ahead of Scored as they come out. Now down to the short run, into the kink. You got to be careful through here with how worn out their tires are, but both of them do a good job holding a nice, predictable line. King Racing Leo is pinning farther back in the grid as well. More than likely, he'll be the first driver to go a lap down in tonight's race. No move from Scored Buffalo on Prius in Canada corner. And I imagine these two drivers will pit this time by. Scored using his slight tire advantage to nearly slide out of control in the second last corner again. But he is still right behind Prius, who is just hemorrhaging time. And Prius is staying out another lap. Prius is going to stay out another lap, but Scored comes in this time by. That decision might be all it takes to sell this race in Scored's favor, because he will have clean air going forward, because Prius is guaranteed to lose a huge chunk of time. Those tires are now at 67% wear, and they're not getting any better. The other thing as well, though, is that Prius has a lot of extra fuel in the tank, so he can short fill when he finally does make a pit stop, find a little bit extra speed by doing so, but he's going to lose so much time with burnt out front tires this lap that he is almost guaranteed to fall behind Scored Buffalo. He'll likely still be ahead of NFL, but he is guaranteed to fall behind Scored Buffalo after this round of green flag stops is done. Maybe Racing, after this pit stop sequence is done, how many positions will he have picked up? He's already back ahead of GRPK Golden. He's already ahead of Dr. Pepper, already clear of King Racing Leo, who has gone a lap down right now. Scored Buffalo already out of the pit lane, but that's inspected. NFL Racer 4812 already out of the pit lane. Maybe coming onto the front stretch now. Big block for 40 is now coming out of the pit lane. Will maybe be ahead of either 2 Fuzzball or Pindaz, as maybe is trying to outdrive his accident from earlier. Maybe will pass Pindaz. And you can see 2 Fuzzball. He's going to clear 2 Fuzzball, and you actually see Big Block just ahead of him. So maybe now up into 5th position, using sheer pace now to try and dig himself out of the hole that he's caught himself in. Your leader, though, is Prius Killer, who is going extra long on a set of soft tires early in the event. He is now at 71% wear on those tires. He'll have 24 laps left after this, though. So he could go a stint 12 laps on softs and another stint 12 laps on the softs again, not have to deal with tire fault that's too aggressive. But the amount of time he'll lose now may be too much for him. We know he's going to end up behind Scored Buffalo, but how far behind is he going to be? As we see him bring his number 76 into the pit lane this time by, we're going to turn our focus now to Scored Buffalo. Well, actually, I want to turn our focus here to maybe Racing, who's just gotten by Big Block just before they got into the carousel, and Big Block is just barely ahead of 2 Fuzzball. Fuzzball actually out-qualified GRPK Gold in the first round of qualifying for today's race. So Fuzzball is showing a little bit of speed and potential in this IndyCar series. But right now, not having a great run near the head of the grid, he's kind of stuck in the middle of what is a slightly smaller than normal field today. But still, Fuzzball is showing some solid results and showing why he was picked up by the GRPK team when they decided to revive their existence about a year and a half ago. So unsurprisingly, Scored Buffalo easily clears Prius. Prius still has not gotten back up to top speed. That won't happen until they come out of turn number 1, and that gap is rapidly open already. 4 seconds is the gap in Scored's favor. Now again, Prius should be able to get away with a slightly lighter fuel load than what he had earlier, which in theory should help him going forward. Now, I don't think any of these drivers on the soft tires went far enough to make the medium tires a viable option. So I think everyone is still going to have one more stop to make. GRPK Golden pitting this time by. But again, he pitted at the end of lap 1, so he's basically having to outdrive an entire extra pit stop. Whatever forced him to pit lap 1 has basically neutralized any good run that Golden was having. And that coupled with NFL running 3rd right now will probably move NFL up into 4th in the points. They're not really close enough to Claiming Racer to steal 3rd from points from him, but they will have closed it down. So it is Big Block running just a little bit ahead of 2 Fuzzball at the moment. Fuzzball here in the number 82 machine trying to run down that all-black machine just ahead. And I think Fuzzball may have the speed to catch Big Block, but overtaking him might be a slightly different story tonight. Trying to close it down just a bit. They can see maybe up ahead, but maybe is on a different planet compared to these two. These two are just fighting for their own merit. Big slide over the curb by Fuzzball there. Not quite close enough to get the draft on Big Block, so he's just trying to close this gap down on sheer driver skill right now. Maybe is now only 20 seconds out from the lead duo. Prius has fallen to 5 seconds out from Scored Buffalo. So yes, just like this race last season, Scored Buffalo in position to walk off with no issue whatsoever after a self-inflicted accident from maybe. The big difference though, maybe self-inflicted accident came much earlier this season compared to last season. Gap between Fuzzball and Block is about 1.5 seconds right now. Keen Racing Leo has briefly gotten back onto the lead lap, but he is still almost a lap down, and we are not yet to the race's halfway point, so it is almost guaranteed he will go a lap down unless we have a yellow flag. But with how spread out the field has been, and with both Coca and Maybe having accidents on the same lap and that not warranting a yellow, I think it's more than likely guaranteed that this race will go green flag to flag, which would be the second green-to-green race, green flag from start to end race that we have had this season. Gap between Fuzzball and Block now seems to be opening a bit. I think Fuzzball may have lost the plot just a little bit, metaphorically speaking. So Scored Buffalo missed out on the pole, but he is running an alternate setup at his home trying to get used to a new setup for everything. Well, he's doing a good job of it, leading by just a bit under 5 seconds. We are going to go ahead and take a Twitch-mandated ad break, and as we do so, we will spin the full lap on board with Scored Buffalo here around one of America's premier racetracks, Road America. We'll be back shortly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Road America. We are not quite halfway through tonight's race. Your race leader and near guaranteed race winner is Scored Buffalo. He has got a gap of about 4 seconds over Prius Killer right now. And while Prius is slowly whittling the gap down, it does seem like between the two of them, Scored has enough speed that while he is making more mistakes than Prius, the sheer raw speed that Scored has is enough to keep him ahead of Prius, I believe, likely to the end of this race. Now, we've seen Scored make some mistakes. He'll lock up, miss a braking zone. He'll turn in a little bit too late. The car gets really sideways over the curbs, but Scored has done a good job. After the first 2 laps, he's been able to keep the car on circuit, and that has been more than what most of the other drivers here can say. Prius Killer finishing his way by lap traffic. Keen Racing Leo and Dr. Pepper are the first 2 drivers to go a lap down in today's event. GRPK Golden, he's still trying to dig himself out of the extra stop that he had to make back on lap 1. We don't know if he's going to be able to stay on the lead lap, but we think everyone from 7th on up should still be able to stay on the lead lap at the end of today's race. Prius Killer kind of floating between 4 seconds out to 5 seconds out from Scored Buffalo today. Maybe Racing has worked his way up into the 4th spot, but he is now 22 seconds out from the rest of the grid. There is likely enough time for him to run down NFL Racer. And again, this race really seems to be mimicking what we saw here last season, because last season it was a similar case where maybe had to kind of dig himself out of a hole, and the final few laps ran down NFL to fight for a podium spot then. So maybe pretty much running the same song second verse they had in this race last season. He's got a 9-second gap to NFL Racer with 19 laps to go. If you can close by about half a second a lap each lap without fail, maybe would catch NFL with about 1 lap left here in today's event, and maybe might still be able to salvage the podium, but his points gap to Scored Buffalo almost guaranteed to open up as long as Buffalo doesn't make a mistake that damages his car as well. Kind of also falling into the same trap that we had in this race last season as well, where there's just not really anything of note to talk about after the deciding incidents pretty much spread out the lead pack early on. And Buffalo now that he has kind of gotten into a rhythm, completely alone on the circuit, is just slowly opening the gap between himself and the rest of the field now. Really, we're all just kind of watching, waiting to see if anyone else is going to make mistakes, because sheer pace alone, coupled with Golden's lap 1 pit stop and the accidents that Maybe and Coca have had, has pretty much dictated where everyone is going to finish. Don't really know what Keen Racing Leo was doing there, swerving as NFL went by him. Gap between NFL and Maybe now at about 10 seconds. Up the hill once again. Across the line goes NFL. Real quick, let's go ahead and look at the fuel and tire wear of our top 4 drivers. 32% wear for Scored Buffalo. Prius Killer is a little bit behind. He is at 27% wear again. He pitted 1 lap later than Buffalo did. NFL running in 3rd position, 32% wear. And then Maybe Racing just a little bit farther back, but it will be comparable. He is at 37% wear. So right now, Maybe is burning his tires up more than the drivers ahead of him. You can definitely tell that Maybe is kind of throwing caution to the wind. He is just driving hard to try and run down, at the bare minimum, run down NFL ahead to try and make something happen. In the end, everyone else in the field is pretty much spread out. Next closest thing to a battle is Block and Fuzzball, but that gap has opened up to about 2 seconds. Block seems to have kind of figured his stuff out and is starting to slowly pull a gap on Fuzzball. Gap between NFL and Maybe now down to about 9.5 seconds. Maybe's going to be the next one to catch traffic in the form of Keen Racing Leo here. Gap between the top 2 now up to 7.5 seconds as we have just crossed the halfway point in this race. Farther back, Fuzzball and Block, they've caught each other. Block's made a mistake, and Fuzzball is now on his inside, neck and neck, side by side for a 5th spot. And for the moment, Fuzzball muscles his way by that 37. Move Fuzzball in the GRPK group up into 5th spot on circuit. Now, what is there that Block can do back against Fuzzball as this goes on? He's at 39% wear with 41% in the fuel tank. Fuzzball has 44% in the fuel tank, 38% wear. So Fuzzball seems to be doing slightly better on tire wear and has slightly less in the fuel tank right now. So that together might be enough for Fuzzball to now try and open the gap. But again, this race, unless you're Scored Buffalo or Prius Killer, this race does not seem to be decided by pace, is just decided by how few mistakes you can make over the event. Fuzzball still in 5th, but I think Big Block just barely in the draft, so should be able to close the gap down. And that is Keen Racing Leo ahead that this duo is closing down on. 7 seconds now is the gap. 7.5 seconds, nearly 8 seconds the gap now between Scored Buffalo and Prius Killer. With no draft, there's just nothing you can do to keep up with Scored Buffalo's pace. Doesn't matter how many mistakes he makes. If he loses 2/10 from one mistake, but he can make up 3/10 on you around the rest of the circuit, it does not matter how many mistakes he will make. And Big Block misses the corner as he saw traffic, and Fuzzball just committed and went right by. Great job on Fuzzball to clear traffic that smoothly. It does look like King Racing Leo pulled off to let Big Block by. But that draft has now been broken. The gap now up to about 8/10 between Fuzzball and Block. We'll go through the carousel. If Fuzzball has a suboptimal exit and Big Block has a good exit, he might be able to catch the draft on the run down to Canada corner. And I think he's just close enough to catch the draft. Won't be close enough to make a big lunge or a big dive, but he is enough to catch the draft. Out of Canada corner. Still close enough to have the draft on Fuzzball. Bit of an oversteer moment that time, and the rear end slides out on Block going into the final corner. He spent so much time trying to correct the car coming out of the second last corner that ended up sending him slightly offline and off kilter. The momentum of the car was not going the right way. Going into the last corner. Now the gap between these two goes back to 1.1 seconds. Between Navy and NFL, that gap seems to have stabilized at about 10 seconds now. So as long as NFL doesn't make any catastrophic mistakes, a podium is on the cards for NFL. And Prius is set for a second place result. It would be back-to-back podiums for Prius after he came home second last week after maybe ran out of fuel. Big slide by Block as he goes wide and catches that right rear on the grass there. Yeah, it seems like now Fuzzball has pretty much disposed of Block. A series of small slides and mistakes that Block has made, coupled with the fact that he is at 52% tire wear, has kind of undone him. We look at Scored Buffalo, our leader. He is at 52% on the tire wear right now. Look at Prius Killer, 9 seconds out. He's only at 48% tire wear. He should have a tire advantage, but the pace just isn't there. You need sheer pace. It does not matter how many mistakes you make. When it comes to fighting with Scored Buffalo, you need to figure out a way to either match his pace or blow his pace away. And Prius obviously does not have that. No one in the series has that outside of Claiming Racer and Maybe Racing. Well, Claiming didn't show up today and Maybe crashed early on. So as long as Scored's mistakes don't somersault into damage, is going to be a walk-off win for him. And Prius should still be able to smile somewhat with back-to-back second-place results. NFL looks like he is on track for a third today. But already after 24 laps, 23 of them racing laps, mind you, he is about 21 seconds out of the lead. So even with the leaders having fought for the first 6 laps very aggressively, NFL has been losing about a second a lap to the lead group. There is no comparison with what Scored can do and everyone else can do here. Well, we've already spent a lap on board with Scored Buffalo. As we're coming up to a point where we should take another Twitch-mandated ad break, let's go ahead for a flying lap and right on board with Prius Killer around Road America. Give you an idea what kind of difference you see from an outsider versus an FEC champion here around Road America. There is no way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Road America. Your eyes do not deceive you. There is a change in the ticker. Scored Buffalo has dropped out of the event just at about the race's 2/3 mark, just before making a pit stop. And suddenly, it is Prius Killer, who is leading by about 32 seconds over Fuzzball, about 16 seconds over NFL. And mind you, Prius will have a slight tire advantage to the end of this race tonight. But Scored Buffalo, your championship leader, lagging out 2/3 of the way into the race, and suddenly the championship gets blown open. Don't know if Buffalo's going to be able or willing to jump in to give an interview. The other question now is going to be, well, this hurts Buffalo a lot. Yes, but maybe he's still trying to outdrive the accident he had earlier. He has fallen behind Pendaz after making what is his second stop. He still has 12 laps to go to the end of this race. Now, he's got fresh tires. 13 laps to the end of this race. We know that maybe has pace. Will he be able to do anything to get back by Pendaz? We think that shouldn't be too much of an issue because we believe Pendaz is on a slightly alternate strategy. He's pushing these tires far. But can maybe do anything to NFL, who was also just recently pitted. He actually chose to pit a lap earlier than everyone else, so he is going for lap time now. So right now it is actually 2 Fuzzball who has cycled into the lead. All right, and coming to the party right now is Scored Buffalo. Buffalo, can you hear me? Buffalo, can you hear me? All right, go ahead, include your audio if you can. You were in a position to walk off. You were dominating that race, pulling a second to lap on everyone who wasn't Prius, basically. What's taking you out here?
I honestly don't know. I think it's just my connection to the server, because everything else, I didn't leave the Discord, I didn't leave, or nothing seemed like out of order. I was just running my race until I was suddenly back at the main menu, and it said multiplayer unavailable. So, I mean, that's it.
So you don't think it had anything to do with the changes and setup that you were messing with for tonight's event?
Oh no, I just, it's just nothing. Like, there's nothing I could do there. Like, I was fine. Nothing seemed out of order, and then suddenly I'm back in the main menu, and I am out of the session, so.
Well, you'll still be scored 10th. We don't know where Maybe's going to finish, although it does look like a podium result is still likely for him. Do you think the championship is still in play?
Honestly, give me just a moment. I think, honestly, with the rest of the stuff on the calendar, I'd say so. Yeah, there's no speedways until the last race of the season. So, I think I'll be good. And in the championship to still contend for it.
All right.
Because I believe I already used my drop round in a different race, I believe. I can't remember. Oh, yes, I did. It was in the first Homestead race. So, I will just, yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we let you go for the night?
Sorry,
Is there anything else you want to say before we let you go for the night?
No, not really. It's just unfortunate that it disconnected like that because I mean, pretty pretty set and dry, but it is what it is.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the word from your championship leader, Scored Buffalo. Championship getting turned on its head all of a sudden here in race 6, but there's still about 10 and a half laps left to run. We've seen one dominant driver lag out. What of Prius Killer, who has now inherited the lead in this event? Mind you, last season, over the 10 races, only 4 drivers won. They were the big 3 in FEC. That is Scored Buffalo, Maybe Racing, and Claiming Racer. And then Prius Killer was the outsider who stole the win at Indy from them all. This season, we have had wins from Claiming, wins from Scored. We saw a win by the NDL driver back at Grand Oak, reverse. Prius is on track to be our 4th different winner in 6 races. So we are looking at a season that, at least on paper, has been more competitive than anything we had last year. But Prius has to keep it together. But even at that, even if Prius kind of falls off, has an accident, has to make an emergency pit late, NFL would take over the top spot. And NFL also has not won in the series. NFL hasn't won in the FEC ecosystem for quite some time, to be fair. But I think right now he's just trying to keep head down, focus on staying ahead of maybe. He has a gap of about 8 seconds on Maybe Racing right now with 9 laps left. So Maybe basically has to find a second to lap to run down NFL for second. Maybe will make up a decent amount of ground in the points, but he is not winning the race, and that was the number one thing he needed to do. He needed to win to really close it down here. Again, you look at how the points format goes. Maybe he's on track to come home 3rd. That's 25 points. Scored will still be scored in 10th. That's still 15 points. For all intents and purposes, Maybe coming home 3rd and Scored being scored as 10th, that only closes the championship fight down by 10 points, mind you. Now, granted, there is 1 extra lap for pole position, so that would close it down by 11 points, and Maybe might still have a chance to steal fastest lap point. We don't know how that's going to turn out, but if Maybe does that, he can close it down by 12 points. But the gap was 22 points coming into the event, so Scored would still have the advantage over Maybe coming out of today's event, unless Maybe can gain some more spots. Again, if Maybe can get up into 2nd position, that's another 5 points. If he somehow pulls back into the lead of this race, he would end up with 40 points compared to just the 15 that Scored has. That would be a 35-point swing, and that would easily put Maybe back in the lead. But again, we saw him crash earlier, so it does not look like that is in the cards for Maybe as we continue to watch NFL circle the field right now. Big slide coming out of Canada corner for NFL that time by. Field has gotten very spread out at this point. Big Block has completely lost touch with 2 Fuzzball as this has gone on, although Fuzzball has caught in traffic in the form of Dr. Pepper right ahead of him. Gets right into Dr. Pepper. I don't think Pepper is really trying to run a super defensive line. I think Pepper is just more running his own race, running his own line. Because again, Pepper does still have... Oh, Pepper is going to be pitting this time, though, apparently. So Pepper makes what should be his final stop with about 8 laps to go. So that will clean the track out for Fuzzball here. NFL racer on track to bring home 35 points today. He was about 40 points out from Claiming coming into today's event. So I think he'll still be behind Claiming, but that gap will have massively shrunk up. So NFL, if he keeps attending races and Claiming keeps missing events, NFL is in a position to maybe take home a top 3 result in the championship this season. Again, the championship, the way the points pay out in this championship, there are points awarded all the way down from 1st to last, and the last 5 drivers, I believe it is the last 3 to 5 drivers in every race, if you had a full 23-car field, they are all guaranteed 10 points by default. So this championship is a gigantic point sink. Yes, there is a drop round, but this championship is a gigantic point sink. It favors attendance over everything else. The more often you attend, the better you will be in the championship points tally at the end of the season. And if NFL keeps attending and claiming keeps missing, yes, I think NFL is well on track to take home third place in overall season points. Gap between NFL and maybe is down to about 8 seconds, but doesn't seem to be closing much faster than that. And every other gap in the field is absolutely massive. Likewise, Big Block is about 7 seconds out from Fuzzball. NFL is 19 seconds out from Prius Killer right now. Again, we believe everyone has made their final stop at this stage of the event. Maybe has to be careful. He's got a great gap between himself and Fuzzball, but he is at 31% wear on his tires. NFL, who is just a little bit up the road from him, NFL is only at 28%, so maybe he's going to be dealing with some awful tire fall off near the end. Fuzzball runs in 4th position right now. He's only at 21%. He actually pitted much later than Maybe did, because again, maybe he's trying to dig himself out of that hole from the accident earlier. So 32% for Maybe, 21% for Fuzzball. So Fuzzball is going to have virtually no tire fall off at the end. Maybe he's going to have some extreme tire fall off at the end. We saw Prius lose about 5 seconds earlier when he stayed out 1 lap longer than against Scored Buffalo. Maybe is going to be staying out for what would be closer to 2 laps longer versus 2 Fuzzball. But he does have a gap of about 16 seconds right now. That might still be enough for Maybe. Again, in this series, while the Forza in-race time penalties are turned on, they almost always are ignored and not seriously considered in the final race results. Not really much to talk about, though, at this stage of the race, sadly. GRPK Golden, I think he'll, with Scored Buffalo having dropped out, GRPK Golden should be good to finish this race on the lead lap, at least. So small victories, and he actually will move up to 7th in the final results. But again, Golden is fine with NFL for what was 4th in the points coming into today's event. But with NFL basically on lock for a second place result, and Golden nowhere near that, I think that fight's going to be just about over. Golden has shown immense ability through these races, but the ability that he has in the car has not transferred over into the ability to bring it home to the end of races. As Keen Racing Leo now going a 2nd lap down. Well, we're in the final stages of the event. We're going to go ahead and ride on board for a flying lap with NFL Racer here. One last ad break. When we come back, we'll stay here to the checkered flag. We'll see what an onboard flying lap looks like from NFL here at Road America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Road America. A little less than 5 laps left in this race. That is Dr. Pepper, please, driving by. But here comes your leader, Prius Killer, as he comes out from under the Corvette bridge and goes by. Prius did not qualify on the front row, but he did fight legitimately with Maybe and scored Buffalo for a prolonged period of time in the first tire stint of this race. Maybe crashed out all on his own in the last 2 corners, while he was able to limp the car back into pit lane, and he's driven fast enough to recover back to third. A win is out of the question for Maybe. So then the fight went to between Prius and Scored going forward. But Prius elected to stay out 1 lap longer than Scored Buffalo. He lost 5 seconds to Scored Buffalo in the process of doing that and just continued to hemorrhage time because without the draft, Prius did not have the sheer pace to keep up with Scored Buffalo. But about 2/3 of the way through the race, Scored Buffalo dropped out. We're not sure if it was a Forza connection issue or if it was an issue with his PC. He did say in the Discord after the interview that it may have been an issue with the Wi-Fi card in his computer not being optimal. So we're not 100% sure what the issue was, but your championship leader, who was on track for an easy win, dropped out. And now Prius Killer has done a good enough job minimizing mistakes that he'll be able to capitalize on Buffalo's misfortunes. And he just has, as he comes across the start-finish line, he will have 3 more laps left here around Road America to bring this home. The interesting fight is going to be for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, because Maybe is starting to close down on NFL. He is now 6.5 seconds out from NFL. If NFL has any sort of issue, Maybe will be right there to immediately capitalize. And mind you, NFL, he's a little bit overfueled, got a little bit too much fuel in the tank, and he's at 47% tire wear. But I look at Maybe in 3rd position. He had to pit earlier. He's already at 51% tire wear right now. The bigger thing, though, Fuzzball. He is way farther back. He is about 20 seconds back, about 22 seconds out from Maybe. But he does not have to worry about tire wear to the end of this race. If Maybe's tires fall off a cliff something bad in the last 2 laps, Fuzzball, could he end up being close enough to capitalize? We saw Prius lose 5 seconds in a lap just from staying out 1 lap longer. Maybe will be in a position where he will be on tires older than Fuzzball for at least 2 full laps, in a point where his tires are going to be absolutely cooked. Already, Maybe is starting to now lose ground to NFL. I was saying that gap was closing. Well, now we're seeing that gap starting to open up a bit now. Again, does Fuzzball have enough time to maybe catch Maybe if this driver's tires go bad? That gap, though, seems to be about 24 seconds right now. So I don't really think it's likely to happen unless Maybe goes off and hits a wall. I think the podium results are pretty much already pre-decided. Other instance, Coca, 1188, had an accident in the first few laps. In the final corner, no damage, kept going, but had a second accident where he stuffed into the tires, completely destroyed the car. It was on the same lap that Maybe destroyed his car as well. So, despite having 2 totaled cars on 2 separate parts of the track, no yellow flag was thrown. So Coco withdrew, saying, hey, look, this is no good. He also said in the Discord that the car was just not within his realm of control. Three laps to go now. 56% wear on the tires for Maybe. NFL, who runs in 2nd, he is at 53%. Prius, who leads, remember, he pitted a little bit later on the first round of stops. He's only at 50% right now. And Prius can afford to back his pace down if he so chooses as well. Gap between Maybe and Fuzzball, about 23 seconds, so Fuzzball still is not closing down on Maybe. I don't think there's going to be enough time for Fuzzball to do anything to Maybe, barring an accident. And every other position on track has pretty much been decided a long time ago. Although Dr. Pepper is limping right now, just has kind of gradually been losing speed and time as this race has gone on. So Keen Racing Leo is closing the gap down to Dr. Pepper. But Racing Leo has some absolutely cooked tires. Dr. Pepper's tires are still good to the end, so I don't really think we'll see him be able to do anything with it. GRPK Golden still on the lead lap, but just barely right now. Gap between 3rd and 4th still hanging out at about 22 to 23 seconds right now. As we see NFL coming out of the final corner, he'll come up behind Dr. Pepper here down the front straightaway. Already Prius 23 seconds ahead of Prius. While his dominance over NFL and the rest of the field isn't quite to the level of a score Buffalo's doing, Prius is still running around at a pace where he is putting about 2/3 of a second on NFL each lap, pretty much. Although dropping tires in the dirt like that obviously is not going to help NFL any. Does not look like Fuzzball is going to have time to catch Maybe. Even though Maybe's tires has completely fallen off the cliff. He is now at 61% wear. Again, he'll have to finish this lap and do another lap afterwards. But unless he stuffs it into a wall, third place is guaranteed for Maybe. And his championship hopes are still alive. A podium today, coupled with a disconnect from scored Buffalo, puts him right back in the middle of the championship hunt. Now remember, there are drop rounds in this series, so maybe can't just rely on showing up in every race to steal the championship away from Buffalo. Because right now, maybe would lose points, as Buffalo would not due to the way the drop round system works. However, and there is a big however, if Scored ends up missing another race, that kind of gets wiped out. But then again, remember also, last season, it was a shorter season, it was a 10-race season. Maybe missed what I think was race 5 or 6 in the season. So he was down a race, and despite that, wrapped up the championship by the end of race 9. So he missed a race and still locked up the championship race early. He could have only started 8 races over the full season and still won the championship. It was that much of a walk-off for Maybe last year. He knows how to bring these events home. White flag is in the air. Prius Killer taking the white for the final time tonight. Well, the only time tonight, technically, I guess. He has about 3 miles left to bring home a win. It's not another win at Indy, but it is back-to-back wins for Prius. Right now, him, Claiming, and Buffalo are the only 3 drivers who can say they've won in back-to-back seasons in the FEC Summer IndyCar Series. And for Prius, he is not one of the big 3. He is an outsider kicking ass and taking names here. Into the carousel for the final time. Fuzzball not closing the gap down at all on Maybe. So yes, Maybe is guaranteed a 3rd place result. No issue there. But still, Fuzzball has got to be happy with a 4th place result. I think that will be his best finish thus far this season. That is GRPK Golden just a little bit up the road from Prius. But I don't think he's close enough to get caught and to go a lap down here. 1 corner left. A little bit wide, but he keeps it, for the most part, off the curbs as they come uphill. Prius Killer is going to take home the victory here in the state of Wisconsin. And that number 76 machine, Prius Killer, goes from 3rd to 1st here at Road America. And NFL, in his quest to try and bring home 3rd in points overall this season, he is at 67% wear on his tires. He is limping it home. He's going to be about 26 seconds out from Prius, but NFL will limp the car home and will bring it to a 2nd place result, tying his best result in the FEC IndyCar Series. And 3rd place, to no surprise, even though he crashed early, Maybe used pure speed to bring home a 3rd place result. 4th place is going to go to 2 Fuzzball as he now comes out of the final corner. Catches a bit of traffic in the form of King Racing Leo. And Fuzzball will come home 4th. 5th place will go to Big Block as he now comes in the final corner. 6th will go to Pindaz, and 7th place will go to GRPK Golden here. And that will wrap up the results here for the lead lap finishers at Road America. Dr. Pepper will be scored with 8th, and King Racing Leo will be scored as 9th. We'll take a Twitch mandated ad break here, and when we come back, we'll try to talk with our podium finishers here at Road America. All right. Can you hear me? All right. Thank goodness. Maybe for once, Xbox parties aren't going to completely fall over on us. Excuse me. All right. Just keep it muted for right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Road America. Your race is over, and in the end, your winner is Prius Killer. Prius, go ahead, include your audio. Great job. You have gone back-to-back seasons in FEC as an outsider and still stealing victories. How in the world did you pull off that much pace today?
By not dying, because I had similar pace to Buffalo in the first stint, but then I kept throwing every single lap in the second stint. But then he lagged out, so that's mainly how I got that one. And then maybe wrecking himself and having to do offset tire strategy was the main issue. So would have been third, I think, otherwise, but just was the only one of the top 3 did not have a problem.
Yeah, well, it ended up working out fantastically in your favor. Came home with a podium last week as well at Indy. You have missed some races already, but do you think you can make a bull run to a top 5 or top 10 result in the championship with these runs of performance that you've had lately?
I think top 5 is definitely possible. I don't know how far behind I am, so I can't say for sure, but if I have the pace for it, which it seems I have, I can probably get podiums most weekends, and then I think that'd probably get me enough to get top 5 no matter what. So.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we let you go to celebrate?
Not really.
All right. Well, that is the word from Prius Killer. Prius, thanks for jumping in and talking with us. We will see you and hear from you at a later time. Peace out. And now I want to go ahead and talk with our second place finisher, NFL. NFL, interesting time to say the least. I don't think anyone had you paid for a podium result, but you came home second, and you're in a position where you can almost steal third in points, I think. Coming out of here, what do you have to say about your run today?
Well, first off, it's awesome to get my first podium of the season on the my Forza home track as well, so it's really, really happy for that, especially since I'm going to be at this track IRL in 2 weeks. But yeah, it's especially after I bottled Fast 8 and wrecked the car in Fast 8, I had no expectations. I thought maybe I could just slowly slug forward, maybe get a top 5, and then shenaniganry happened, and I was very happy to take advantage of that and just come home with a podium. I knew I didn't have anything for Prius, so long as he didn't have any shenaniganry, which he didn't. But hey, P2 and with Scored and I both showing up and scoring points. Granted, I wish Scored hadn't DNF'd and he could have got higher points, but it'll be a good points payout for our team for the team's championship as well.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we go ahead and let you go for the night?
Very nice to talk to you finally. Been chasing the interview for the whole season. Just come up just short. So nice to talk to you. Thank you for all your broadcasts, and thanks to Panda for hosting the events and everything.
All right, well, that's the word from NFL. And now the last interview we'll do for the night, maybe racing. Maybe for you, this has got to be very frustrating because the race story for today, basically a word-for-word repeat of this race for you last season here. Out front, on the pole, led a bunch of laps, crashed all on your own, basically spent the rest of the day digging yourself out of a hole. But you still got a podium out of it, and you still closed the championship gap down at least. What do you have to say about your time, maybe?
Yeah, all things considered, I can't be upset with the result. The incident where I just lost the car on my own, I don't know, I felt like I had some dirty air, and I just lost it. Apart from that, I was nursing what felt like an issue. I'm not sure if it was just placebo or whatever. I'm gonna have to do the diagnostics on that on my end. All things considered, I really can't be upset with the third place. I was able to get it back there, and everything worked out well that way.
By an issue, do you mean like a physical issue? Like, are you physically okay?
Yeah, everything's okay there. I felt like I was having torque spikes throughout the race, just randomly, and a couple times I almost actually put it in the wall after that incident. I don't know if it's on with either the quote-unquote drivetrain or however it happened, but everything otherwise is fine. Just have to run some diagnostics.
I was a little bit concerned about your health there for a moment. I
No,
apologize for
everything's
that.
okay.
All right. Okay. Well, either way, maybe at least it is a podium. In 6 races, you have 4 podiums thus far. All of them are only third place finishes. Do you think a step on the second or top step on the podium is in the future this season for you?
I always knew going into the season that getting a win would be very hard, and up until this point, about in the last season, it was about the similar. I hadn't yet had a win. So, all things considered, I have to be looking not in a terrible spot, considering everything that's happened in this season, so I think anything's possible.
All right. Well, maybe the only driver left from last season who won a race last season who has not yet won a race this season. We're still waiting to see if he can turn that fortune around. But with that in mind, that'll pretty much wrap up our broadcast tonight from Road America. I've been your host for today's broadcast, Insane Leader 13. On Friday and Saturday, we will be back with the X League for the Porsche Cup and GT3 Pro races, respectively. And FEC Summer IndyCar will be back in a week's time as well. So don't forget to join us then. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Farewell. Have a good night and stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.